Hi, everyone. We're going to ping this link out because it seems like this one works. Sorry about this.
No worries.
All right, can you hear us?
Yeah, we can hear you other than the feedback. Maybe you want to mute now.
Okay, we got it.
All right, are we all right now?
We need to open that one.
Yeah.
Sorry, apparently that key can only be used by one person at a time. Someone more important, that's what it means. Okay, so let me find the agenda and get started. Okay, I hope everyone can see this.
Yep.
All right, and then everyone can hear us okay? I'm assuming that's yes. So top of the agenda is we are migrating from the use cases doc to GitHub issues. I think it's just easier for discussions for the GitHub issues, and then we can actually move them around on the project board. So what's that? Oh, so I've linked the doc. If you have your entry there, I think probably filing an issue will make sense, and then we can kind of deprecate the doc at some point. The other thing, sort of administratively, is now we have a project board. I spent a little bit of time going through this. So just to show this, is that we've separated into inbox, which is basically just issues that were filed. The stuff in progress is basically PRs. And then we have the discussion items, which will be the set of use cases that we're looking at. And then for some reason, GitHub Light's done, which we just archived. So please take a look at this. And then I think we'll use this as a way to sort of go through the issues. It seems to be pretty convenient. We'll try this out. Any questions on these things?
No, that's cool. I've never seen a project board on GitHub.
Yeah. It doesn't automatically add stuff, but it's reasonable, at least at this level. Once you open this on Kubernetes, it doesn't work. So don't try it there. So two things probably want to take care of is that hangover from last week, I think, is one, the clarification on the gateway concepts. Thanks everyone for commenting on this. There was a ton of conversation. I think it seems like we have kind of like converged on at least a rough draft. This is not the final thing, so we can obviously submit PRs against this, but I would expect that we can merge this and then iterate based on it. Also, if you merge this, you get the fancy docs on the web, so you can look at that instead of looking at it through the GitHub diff. So if people are generally okay with what is here, then we can kind of tag it with LGTM and go forward.
That's a thumbs up from me.
Sounds good.
I think is Harry on the call? Yeah, Harry, you had some comments here.
Yeah, no, those are resolved. That looks good to me now.
Okay, someone can do a drive-by and it will get merged, I think, unless someone merges before me. Please don't do that. So the other one, kind of to discuss, I don't know if we can resolve it here, but I guess we could just talk a little bit about what kind of we need or want to see.
Yeah, so this was my PR. It was all about trying to make gateway status a thing and something that was sensible. And I think we're relatively close. The initial PR had a lot in status, including status items for every single route and listener. And the matching was done index-based, so route status at index 2 map to route at index 2, which just unfortunately does not scale, it seems, especially if someone happens to add a route in a different position and things get out of order, then your status gets very confusing. So the second pass at this, I pushed out yesterday, I think, and made a few changes based on feedback. One of them was to go ahead and, at least for now, remove the concept of status for individual routes from Gateway. And we can discuss if we want to pull that back at some point, but that was based on a few things. One, it was really hard to tie Gateway routes and their status together because they're really just object references. They're really just referencing some other Kubernetes object. And because they're referencing some other Kubernetes object, those objects could potentially store their own status. Additionally, it got really messy as far as how far we could scale this out. Being someone who has already seen the pain of endpoints getting to be really huge resources and then eventually running out of room, I think this is less extreme, but you still run the same possibility if you're having a ton of routes and then you have multiple conditions per route all within the same resource. So that was another point of concern.
That brings up a good point, though, that we should, if someone wants to open up an issue about what the scales that we are expecting.
Yeah, and so that's a comment somewhere down there that we should have a follow-up issue to decide what we want to say we can support, or just numbers of routes as an example, or I'm sure there are other metrics that we also should be setting forward as goals. We want to support X number of listeners as an example. I don't think we have that specified yet, but that would be really useful.
Yeah, okay. I just put it here as a placeholder.
Cool.
Let's duplicate that. No. Okay.
That.
All right. So I'll
yeah.
open that.
Okay. With listener, I took a different approach in the proposal, and that's because listener is not a reference to another object. The listener object is more of a sub-resource. It exists within Gateway. And so if you want to have status on that listener, it needs to be within the same resource. So I actually added or proposed adding a name field to listeners that would need to be set for every single listener. And that would be how you would tie the listener status to an actual listener. This follows the model that's set forward by pods and containers and the status associated with them. And I think it's the best possible way to link objects like this with their status. So that's a high-level overview of where I went with this proposal in the past week, and there's been some really great feedback even since then. And I think what will probably take a lot of the conversation, well, not necessarily here, but on this PR itself, is how we phrase conditions.
Oh, God.
Which has turned into this remarkably controversial thing. The convention seems to indicate that we should use negative conditions.
Well, since Clayton speaks, I'm going to assume that's the SIG-Arch position.
Right, but now the position seems to be disregard the docs and actually have positive. So need a bit of clarity there, but it's right now all the conditions that exist in this proposal are negative, and it sounds likely that we'll want to change these to positive.
does it make any sense to just follow what is documented now and just for the sake of progress? I mean, there's something I think that precludes us from changing course if there's some imminent change in that's actually agreed on and published, I guess. But I guess it's hard to fault us, I guess. I feel like for following for better or worse, the current conventions at least, just so we can make progress and not have to relitigate it
I
out
think
of context.
we can just fix it
Yeah,
if someone
Yeah.
gets riled up enough.
that makes sense.
Although we should file an issue just to track it.
So James already filed an issue saying, hey, what's up with that? I'm happy to, I want to chase that now because that's exceptionally annoying for me. We were literally about to do a similar thing for Contour. And so it's very valuable for me to also have that clarified. So I would, I'm happy to chase that down and be the one who cares about that.
Cool.
I guess the one thing that I feel like that would be annoying, I guess, the thing that stood out to me was that there was an implication that there may be some significant semantics change. I guess, like if in that you can imply or like an empty condition set has some implied meaning, I guess. So that would.
So that was my sort of read as well. Is that the original thing was that an empty condition set implies everything is okay, whereas if the conditions are everything is okay, then an empty condition set is kind of undefined. And so
that'd be more than a rename to me in terms of refactoring. But
so, I mean, to me, I actually think given that Clayton is like, no, just do the name positive. And you know, the guys from Knative have made a good case, I think, for why they should be positive. And it looks like a lot of the conditions that I've seen from things are they're already mixed. You know, even amongst the core things. If you think about the node object itself, it has a ready condition, which is a positive condition, but then it has all of the, you know, out of memory style conditions as well, which are negative conditions. So, you know, so I think it probably makes more. I actually think it probably makes more sense to just go with the thing that we think it's going to end up being. If you know Clayton sort of come in and said, "Hey, yeah, just use the positive ones," I think we're actually better off going with that first and then changing it back later if we can't, if nothing ends up coming of trying to change the conventions. Because I think I suspect the conventions will just be changed. That in the very near future.
Yeah, I mean,
they will be if I have anything to say about it.
Yeah, we should just do whatever seems the most natural, which would be the different one.
You're not going to get any argument from me. I'm willing to go with the flow with this one, just for the sake of forward movement. I don't want a bike shed.
Yeah, that's why I feel like the positive ones is just probably better to just flip them to positive. And I mean, it's literally just renaming them for now. And then if we flip, but it does imply a thing for later that would be harder to walk back. That's all.
So I have a question about conditions with regards to the routes. So on the gateway status, you can tell when something went wrong with routes because there's some conditions that refer to routes. But because conditions, as we just discussed, are non-interoperable, there's no way to look at all the routes and figure out which route went wrong because you can't examine conditions without knowing anything about the type of resource that's publishing the condition.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a solvable problem that we can decide for this to use interoperable conditions and be the ones who say, no, your conditions should be interoperable so that you can do that. And that's what the core condition type is supposed to be for, though, right?
I think that ship sailed. Conditions are not interoperable then, and they're never going to be interoperable. So maybe we should. So I think I think I don't want to keep banging on PR number 47. I think that's accumulated enough history, and I'm fine with merging as it is. I think my suggestion for a subsequent PR might be is to include the object ref for a route which has an issue so that a controller can say, here's a condition and it's a condition with this route, and at least you can know, at least some tooling or someone can know which one to look at, even if you can't understand the conditions to see what the problem was.
I think we potentially, so I agree that's really helpful and gives a lot more feedback. I am concerned especially for moving to positive conditions. then if you're having a positive condition times X per every route, so let's say you have 5 different conditions that are positive for every single route, it limits how many routes you can have in a gateway.
Oh, then you would have to use negative conditions.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
goes back
that's a
to-
good point.
It is a very good point, actually, for it being about negative conditions. Yeah. I mean, so
But if you have positive conditions, then you have to have a positive condition. You have one positive condition to say all the routes are okay.
I
Yeah.
guess that's something we have to decide whether that becomes a you must do this as an implementation, I guess.
yeah, and I guess the other option is that you could have the condition be, some routes are invalid, and then instead of supplying a single object reference, supply a slice of object references, and be like, these ones are all invalid, and then you're talking about a possibly big single slice as part of a single condition rather than a lot of conditions. I don't know if that helps much, but it is a possibility. So look, I'm not going to die on the hill of we must change this to positive before we move this. Just to be clear, okay? I think that we should work very quickly on figuring out what the actual guidance is and doing whatever the hell that says. But I'm not going to block this PR on doing that. So just to be clear.
Yeah, it sounds like we should follow up, maybe file an issue with capturing, I heard like 2 or 3 use cases. Basically, one is be very clear which one is causing the fault, and then how to represent that efficiently, I think. And yeah, does that capture kind of what the sort of desired use case?
Yeah, I can take action to file an issue to be able to chase down, to have some API that will let you chase down specific route condition or errors or status.
Right. Okay. Great. But
Yeah,
probably this one should be okay generally. Actually, I don't know, Rob. What's
Up from me.
on it?
I mean, there are a number of typos and relatively small things, I think, that from the last time I looked at the feedback. So there's things that need to be fixed, but I don't think there's anything particularly huge that couldn't be addressed in under an hour, let's say. The move to positive, I think my personal vote would be something to avoid, at least for now, until we get clarity. I don't care too much either way, but my gut would just say until we can get the official docs changed, which I think is a meaningful effort, then and more consensus from SIG-Arch, then just as is probably a
Yeah, we're going to
decent
change it
starting point.
anyways.
Yeah.
So probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So if people can take a look at this, and then if it doesn't get any more, like if people are generally okay, knowing that we are going to improve it, then we can probably just merge this and keep going. All right. Any other thoughts on that? Okay.
As I said, I think James logged the initial issue to follow up in one of the main cube things. So I will also stick with that and chase down some more who we need to talk to and what needs to happen to do that. So just wanted you to know I will take that.
Thanks.
So we can open some of these small ones. Actually, I want to, let's see. So this, just open some of these up. I think this one's a big one. So I know that we talked about better modeling of a virtual host. And as a follow-up, we said we'll file an issue and then try to accumulate discussion here. I just wanted to throw this out here that this is the issue that was filed, and hopefully it captures what we discussed. I think we're still trying to collect data. Damian had a link here, but it would be great if everyone kind of took a look at this and basically put your 2 cents here, and probably once we have some more feedback on this, we'll either file a PR and then discuss it actively over the next call. But I think this is probably one of the more bigger design items for gateway and routes. to resolve. And it would be great if we had everyone's input on this issue. Yeah, so please look at this. This is called Better Modeling of a Virtual Host, number 49. And hopefully it captures that conversation from last time. Let's see, so some of the small stuff we can kind of knock out. I think some of the naming conventions we can probably put into just like a developer API conventions, another conventions doc, yet another conventions doc. Actually, that one is in the API conventions. Maybe we'll just make this well known and close it. What do you guys think? Actually, what should we do? We should just link to the API conventions and then just pull out certain things that we feel are important. What do you guys think?
It's fine by me.
Okay. Maybe we'll just have our
Fine
own
with me too.
thing and then just route people to the main one. Okay. So here's another one. So, oh wait, this is on the route APIs. Let's go back. So, see if we have, scheduling constraints, machine parsable. Oh, okay, here's another that we can just take care of real fast. So this one, just for FYI, is to just make the support annotations actual annotations. That seems okay to me. The one thing is it's not clear that every feature will be a one-to-one mapping of like a particular field. So this might just be for doc generation purposes. I don't know if you can actually map it quite precisely to actual features, but we can go with this for now. I think if people are okay with this, then we can just add the docs and then LGTM merge it. Let's see.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. And even if we don't use that exact thing, then if it's all the same type of string, then it's easily grep/settable.
Quick question about those. My first encounter with having to deal with some of these struct tags was in the context of open API stuff in QBuilder and things, and there was no like real documentation around them, or it's hard to discover them. I guess like if we start adopting some set of tags like this, is there somewhere that we're supposed to be documenting them or defining some kind of spec around them? I see them kind of appear ad hoc, and I wonder if I'm just missing something or if they really are just ad hoc.
At least for QBuilder, it's a little bit implementation is the definition. I think what we will do is create automation around it, and then basically that will be the documentation, at least within this particular project. If it becomes a wider, it's hard to conceive of it in a wider context. Maybe we can shop it around and more people will adopt our convention, but at least we will start with just automation enforcing it. So if you like misspelled something, then it will kind of won't let you submit a PR.
Thanks.
I think I alluded to it a couple of times in comments on PRs, but I do think that one of the things that we're effectively doing here is creating exemplars on how to do this sort of work. You know, more generally for Cube, like a lot of people who are going to build controllers are going to be coming here and looking at this code base and looking at the way we've done the types and looking at the sorts of stuff we've done and taking that as an example for how they should do their controllers. I mean, I don't know about anyone else, but that's how I tend to try to build a new thing, is to look at how other people have done similar things. This is really the first thing that's close to Core Cube that is doing things in this sort of CRD kind of way. So, I mean, I don't want to put pressure on everyone to be like, it must be perfect, but at the same time, we should be aware that, you know, what we're doing is probably going to may but end up being a de facto default because we're the first ones to do it. That's all.
No pressure. I think it's fine. We're reasonable people. So this is another big topic I think we should also open up and have some discussion on. This is basically what is going to govern the selection of routes with gateway. I think that's like, this is a specific way to do it. And I think at KubeCon we did discuss sort of opening it up to selection versus explicit. So yeah, I wanted to get people's thoughts on this. I think it might be useful to go through a couple of use cases and whether or not we could get into trouble, especially with, let's say, the status. Like, could it be, oh, then we would require the object reference. We couldn't even use
Yeah, I mean, if
the
you
array.
yeah, if you wanted to have route status on gateway, I think this would not work with that. But we're already realizing that route status on gateway is difficult. So we may not be losing much with this approach.
Yeah, I mean, I think fundamentally the thing that people are trying to address with having the route status on the gateway is that it's nice to be able to look in one place and be like, is anything wrong?
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
Not yeah, I mean, and then it's nice to have a breadcrumb trail that you can follow to figure out what's wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there implementation experience for this kind of approach with different ingress controllers?
Selection. Anyone want to pipe up?
Ingress class.
That's true. Ingress class will scan all the namespaces to find or configure it to find the set of relevant routes to connect.
Yeah, and one thing I think we should make sure when we design this is consider the most simple use case where not everybody, but a big chunk of users will probably never have more than one gateway, like a lot of times, and it should be easy for them to just use this API. Like ingress is so narrow and simple, but simple use cases do suffice pretty well. So.
This is actually, Makai, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is like the linchpin, I think, of OpenShift's ingress implementation supports, uses this to support sharding. So it's actually pretty common for our customers to use multiple kind of gateway equivalents, I guess you would say, where they are distinguished on the domains they service, and then they also are scoped to sets of routes using a criteria like this. So that would be the one use case is sharding routers.
And I also looked at the Istio gateway as a reference model. So if I'm not wrong, I believe in a gateway, you use label selectors to associate a gateway to a specific Istio Envoy reverse proxy.
Right. So I think I just wanted to focus people's attention on this one and collect some more data, and then we can iterate on this. I think this also has a linkage with the virtual hosting, and we can resolve, sort of get more info on this, maybe some hands-on experience with playing around with it. The sort of pieces that would be nice to answer is access control, and then how much you need, and then of course like how does it boil down in the most simplest case and then the sophisticated case.
Yeah, and really quick too, I guess the problem that I was thinking of was how with the different personas, what's the user experience like if a developer is creating these different routes and then having to go to the cluster admin and saying, okay, add these routes to the gateway because I don't have access to the gateway, where if they knew, if the gateway cluster administrator said, okay, well, if you want to use a particular gateway, just go ahead and add these labels to your routes, and then it'll automatically create that finding.
Yeah, I think we actually wrote like there's a big section of the notes from the KubeCon discussion that basically is this. So I'll try to make a linkage here. We basically discussed, actually the one user in that room had the suggestion that he would like some sort of summarization so that it wasn't you don't need to like by hand just send routes back and forth between the admin and the user.
We actually have a lot of questions about this sort of thing for Contour as well, because Contour already includes a similar kind of thing to an extent where there's, for our type, the HTTP proxy, there's, it's the same type, it's the same like object type, but there's actually kind of two subtypes based on whether or not it has a virtual host definition. One with the virtual host definition is a root HTTP proxy, and that's treated slightly differently than one that is a HTTP proxy that has stuff included from it. And so what can happen is if you want to be able to control who has access to the FQDNs, then you need to have some way to say, for this FQDN, only these namespaces or people what you really want is people should be able to create links between the FQDN and the actual routes that you want. And so the problem there is then, that makes, if you do stuff to do that, there's a tension there that makes the easier case harder, because in the case where you want to have that security, it's much harder to be able to turn that security on or off. And so that's the tension, is between making it so that it's easy, you don't accidentally have people clobbering each other's FQDNs, versus having this binding be much more automatic and not needing admin persona to actually manually approve those things. Because in we don't want anybody to be able to accidentally clobber things case. You need a human in the loop. Whereas we don't worry so much about that, because we trust everyone to be well behaved. Then you don't need the human in the loop.
I think one interesting thing that brings up this, especially with the virtual host and this FQDN, is whether or not gateway. I think everyone generally, I'm just guessing, agrees that putting gateway attributes like the IP and the port, that one is like generally like, okay, that's sufficiently generic. The piece that is interesting is basically host name or FQDN or SNI. It feels like that is actually suitably generic to have a concept of that in gateway. Even like it won't make sense for TCP proxy, but maybe it's just empty for that case or something. But most of the other protocols we support will have some notion of this host. And if we can all agree that that's something that lives in gateway, then that actually kind of resolves certain things about what information should be in gateway versus other places as well.
Yeah, if it was like a list of the hosts that could be served by this gateway, then that would be, rather than being it's kind of like an allow list rather than a these are the hosts, a declare list. I guess if you want the config to live at the route level, then you'd have to do something like that says this gateway is claimed these things or something, or owns these things. Maybe that's the right way to think about it, is who owns the domain name, or who owns the host name is a better way to put it.
Any one of the Ingress implementers this may have come up, have some experience around this?
Generally just default to whatever users are doing and trust the users, but I really like Nick's idea on like having an allow list rather than, okay, this is the list. The allow list is like, it also has a good separation of concern with, with the operators and the developers who are using the route resource versus the gateway resource. So +1 on that.
So is the concern about conflicts between routes, or is the concern about if the gateway goes out and provisions a load balancer, publishes DNS records, and that kind of thing? Like, is it just conflicts between routes, or is it conflicts between routes and other things outside of the scope of Ingress v2?
I think it might be both. Like, we'd have to look at the use cases. One is we're giving more fine-tuned control so that you can get a better error message almost. And then the other one would be that you can have automation to do the filtering in a consistent way, as opposed to, for example, being outside of this API. and the conflicts between routes will happen, given that we have multiple routes being attached. That's a separate topic, I think, we need to figure out. I think in the sketch, we just said that it's up to the implementation to kind of flag an error. It's unless we go to some pretty onerous policy where you have to kind of declare. There was a proposal, I think, to like have like host name claims or something. You basically make all the host names kind of concrete things, and then you can like attach to them. That might get kind of unwieldy.
Yeah, I think if they were a separate object, it would be pretty unwieldy. You know, we've already got enough objects, I think. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's what I was trying to suggest with thinking of it like an allow list. Like that lets because the gateway, it kind of feels to me like the gateway is the spot where the admin persona sort of holds control. And so if you put something about the host name in there, then that allows the admin controller to have exercise some control over the host name. Probably they're going to want to, I mean, as someone who's run this sort of thing, both as an operator and as an Ingress implementer, one of the things that I was worried about when I was an operator was people like, you know, messing with, we didn't do automated DNS, but you could, but you know, the things that you got to worry about is what happens if someone decides that they want to, for funsies, publish a google.com, you know, route, and that ends up flowing up to a thing, and then you try and provision DNS, right? Like, you know, it gets, you know, how do you stop like domain hijacking and things like that? Whether it's for people outside or whether you stop people inside hijacking the domain of someone else who runs inside the cluster. And that's the sort of concern that we were thinking about with the sort of the distinction between the root HTTP proxy and the other ones in Contour is stopping people from clobbering each other, more likely to be accidentally than, you know, by malfeasance, but like, yeah, but the clobbering thing is the thing that we were really worried about.
Okay, so unfortunately with this copy of Zoom, we have like less than 1 minute. So we're also at time. I think take a look at these issues, and basically I think for the next session, over the next week, I think we'll discuss the virtual host and sort of this. And then it would be great if we could sort of at least come to a rough draft that we can play around with to see what the consequences are. And I would love to have that, because then there's like gateway and then SSL, and that would kind of, at least we could have a rough draft of gateway. So thanks everyone for showing up to this meeting, the alternate meeting, and we'll make sure we think about the key. What happened that day?
All right, thanks.
Yes.
Bye.
All right. Thanks, everyone.